Hello and welcome again to Dorchester Baptist Church Online. This week on Tuesday was the anniversary of the first lockdown, and so I felt that I really wanted to speak into that a little bit, and I've been pondering and looking at things online and various ideas that people have got about what we can learn from this virus. And so if you just permit me for a few moments just to share some of my thoughts by way of an introduction this morning. So what can the people of God learn from the pandemic? Well, I think we need to be a little bit careful that we get the balance right. We can't read too much into things as some have done over the past year. But I do believe that there are quite often simple lessons that circumstances can teach us. In fact, Jesus said to the disciples to learn from the lilies of the field. Solomon said, learn from the ant. So as I've reflected on this, there are a few things that I'd like to suggest this morning in terms of what we can learn from the COVID-19 virus. First thing is this: it has a high reproductive rate. And we need as Christians, I think, to be more reproductive. The typical flu has a one person to one person reproduction rate. So one person will infect one other person. Now, if as Christians we just did that, we could change the world. As we know, COVID virus has a much higher reproduction rate. It's known as the R value, and it's something that we've watched very closely over these last 12 months. It's the rate at which the virus spreads. But let's just take the simple rate of 1 to 1. Let me just put it into a real life example for you. What if one of you, listening to this video, you took this stuff seriously and you decided after watching this that you're going to do what I'm saying, and you're going to make a disciple, and you're going to do it over the period of a 1 year, a 1-to-1 reproductive rate, that's all. Now if you did that, and at the end of the year, if then you both went and you shared your faith and you talked to someone else and you made one more disciple, and then a year later that you each made one more disciple, and we just keep reproducing at a 1-to-1 ratio, 34 years later, everyone on the planet would love Jesus. That's all it would take. And you know what we'd be doing? We'd simply be doing what Jesus told us to do in Matthew 28, when he said, go and make disciples. You wouldn't have to quit your job. You wouldn't have to raise money. You wouldn't have to change the way that we do church or anything like that. All we would have to do is find one person who's broken, who's hurting, and set them free and love them and teach them. If we just did that, we could change the world. But I think in order to reproduce at that rate, the second thing I want to suggest is this: we need to have a contagious faith. We need to have a faith that is actually worth reproducing. And right now, I think if you went and you asked the ordinary person, if you go out and you ask your neighbour, or maybe go and ask your friends at work, ask the people who are not followers of Christ, if you ask them, is the Christian faith something that you want to be infected with? I'm not sure they would say yes. Now, I'm sure there's lots of reasons for this. Maybe it's because we've been sidelined by things that aren't truly that important. But as I look around, if I'm honest, I think there are times when we've become a bit like the Laodiceans in Revelation chapter 3. And Jesus says of them, you are more known, more commended for what you hate, rather than what you love. And all too often, in an effort to remain true to our faith, we speak out against things. And I understand why we do that, but I think there's a danger. The danger is that we can become known more for the things that we're against than because of the love that we have for people. That must change. I don't want to reproduce that kind of faith. Rather, let's reproduce a faith that is worth reproducing. So secondly, we need to have a contagious faith, one that's worth spreading, and one that is based on love for other people. The third point is that the virus adapts and evolves to survive. Now we need to stop trying to make methods that worked 200 years ago or even 20 years ago work today. Now isn't that one of the biggest lessons that we've learned in this past year? Well, we've had to totally adapt what we do as Christian community. the virus adapts and grows. We must do the same. Fourthly, the fourth thing is this: it follows natural paths. The virus spreads through human contact. It goes from person to person as they come into contact with each other. And that's the way I believe that the gospel seems to work, through relationship. We need to realise that it's not about events. No, it's about one person loving one person. So I wonder, let me ask you this morning, where are your natural paths? Who are the people that you're already connected with, in contact with, spending time with? Like the virus, our faith is spread through natural paths. Fifth thing is, this is a global pandemic. There's no boundaries to this thing. There's no borders to this thing. There's no governments that can stop this thing, because it's all around the world and it affects all of humanity. But not only does it affect us, it affects every area of our lives. It affects our entertainment, our education, business, governments, religion. Everything is affected by this virus. And I think that the kingdom of God is meant to be just like this. It's like that little bit of yeast that gets put into the dough and affects the whole batch. We have to be the salt to the world that makes everything taste better. This is what we're supposed to do. We're to affect every part of life, not just a Sunday event, but to every aspect of life we are to bring the kingdom of God. And number 6 is this, that all people can spread the virus. Now, whilst that is true, I find it quite interesting that one of the things we noticed was the way in which the younger people were affected less by the virus. So they tended to spread it more because they would just go out and about and they would pass it on to other people, all the people that they were in contact with. Whereas the older people, they would actually get ill, they would feel the effects of the virus, and so they would tend to be more isolated. Now this is a lesson, I think, for us. And I believe the young people are being prepared for God for a day such as this. Because here's the thing, whether we like it or not, most of us, if you're my age or older, well, quite frankly, we're just getting a little bit old now. Now that doesn't mean that we don't have a role to play. It doesn't mean we don't have things to do. But the next generation can better spread the kingdom of God. And we need to support them in that. And lastly, what about the vaccine? Well, you see, vaccines work by giving a person a very small dose of the virus. And too many people have been inoculated to the Christian message because they once received a very small dose. We must make sure and be very careful that we don't water down the Christian message. In an effort to evolve, in an effort to be something that people are going to want to be infected with, we can't water down the message of Christ. As Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians 2 when he says, I resolve to know nothing but Christ and him crucified. This can never change. In fact, it does never change. You see, we only have one message that is worth spreading, that Jesus is the Son of God and the only way to a relationship with him. And there's no other medicine that can truly save a person's soul. So, let's infect others with a contagious faith through the natural paths and natural relationships that we already have. Let's continue to evolve as we have over this past year through Zoom and social media and YouTube. Because you see, through those methods there are no boundaries. And today's generation needs to be encouraged and supported because they're really good at this stuff. And in the same way that COVID has changed everything, let's do the same with a message of hope, which is simply this: Jesus is the Son of God and the only way to a relationship with him. And there's no other medicine that can truly save a person's soul.